My brother made fun of my legs the other day.
Your mom did?
My brother made fun of my legs. He said I had fat legs.
Alrighty, well, welcome back to another episode of On Curve EDHcast, and we're dropping in today with an air assault from Roalesk Apex Hybrid.
You didn't let me introduce myself.
Oh yeah, okay, so you're saying...
just jumped into it.
I'm
What
sorry.
is this, Will? Goodness gracious. Good morning, evening, or afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us, whatever time it is you have decided to stop in. Yeah, get a little snaps. Good snaps. Now you can do your little tidbit. Gosh.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk about a new commander from War of the Spark. He's a bit of a janky one because of how he interacts with the command zone.
Yeah.
But we're talking about Roalesk?
Rolex?
Rail?
Is a watch?
Rolex? I don't know how to pronounce them. I am going to make the O and the A into a diphthong and call him Roalesk.
Rolesk.
So,
we will be referring to him as Rolesk this episode. If we're wrong, you can yell at us later. Yeah, so Roalesk is a cool dude.
He is.
Because he interacts a little bit differently than what you would usually like your commander to do. So we saw this in Alendra, the Dusk Rose, where in order for you to get their ability, they have to die. And so, would you read off Roalesk really quick, Will?
Yeah, so Roalesk is a 5-mana, 4/5 flying trample with, when he enters the battlefield, put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control, and when Roalesk dies, proliferate and then proliferate again. And for those of you who don't know, proliferate says choose any number of permanents and or players, and then give each another counter. This is really small to read. Each another counter of each kind already there, and then you do it again. So if you've got a +1/+1 counter on a creature, you're going to put another one on, and then another one on.
If you have planeswalkers, you're going to put a loyalty counter on it, and then a loyalty counter on it again.
Yes.
If someone has like poison counters on something like that, you're going to be able to proliferate those. If you have an experience counter for some reason, Roalesk will let you take up your experience counters too. So he's kind of cool, and personally, I would probably use him more so in the 99, but today we're going to experiment and see what it would look like if he was at the head of your deck and what tools and instruments you would like to use in order to make him operate pretty well. So, Will, what are kind of like our key things that we're kind of looking at?
So here's the thing with Roalesk, is that in order to get that proliferate trigger, which is super powerful and super cool, he has to go to the graveyard. You can't put him back in the command zone because when commander dies, you choose whether or not you want to put it in the command zone or the graveyard. And if you put it in the command zone, then it doesn't count as dying, so any dies triggers don't actually happen. So if your opponent had a Blood Artist and your commander dies and you choose to put it in the command zone, then their Blood Artist won't trigger.
I think you should use the word destroyed instead of dies in that instance then. So when your commander is destroyed, it doesn't die, it goes to a different place.
Good point. Yes. Yeah, if it's killed in combat, something like that. Yeah. So it means that you kind of have to build in the deck some ways to get Roalesk out of the graveyard because we want him to die, we want him to proliferate, we want to get the value off of that. And so you've got to have a whole package for getting him back out of the yard. And I think there's actually some pretty cool cards that don't see a whole ton of play in Commander, but could be really cool with Roalesk. And our first one is called Verdant Rebirth. It is a 2-mana instant from Ixalan. It costs 1 in the green, 2 mana total, and it says, until on a turn, target creature gains. When this creature dies, return it to its owner's hand, draw a card. So, you'd say, alright, Roalesk is going to die this turn, and so, or you can do it like in response to a board wipe, or if you're going to have him die in combat or something, you do this before damage, and then when he dies, he'll go to the graveyard, the proliferate triggers will happen, you'll get that effect, and then he'll return to your hand, and you get to draw a card off of Verdant Rebirth.
Yeah, no, I think that he's super good. And another very verdant spell that we have is Verdant Confluence. And so this is part of the cycle that was in Commander 2015. The most one I think that sees plays is Mystic Confluence.
Mystic Confluence, yeah. I think they all kind of see a little bit of play.
I think Mystic seems probably the most.
Yeah, definitely. You're right.
But yeah, so what Verdant Confluence is, it's a sorcery. It's 6 mana, 4 generic, and 2 green. and it reads, choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. You can put 2+1/+1 counters on a target creature. You can return target permanent from your graveyard to your hand, so Roalesk. Or you can search your library for a basic land card and put it in the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library.
Is this a sorcery or an instant?
No, it's a sorcery.
Okay.
But I think that the coolest part about this is so what you do is if you pay 6 mana, you're either getting a regrowth and 2 regrowth and 2 rampant growths, or you're you're doing whatever you're doing.
Is the first mode putting counters on things?
It is, but I don't like that one.
Well, we are proliferating, so
it could be beneficial in any instance, but I feel like that's the weakest one of the 3 certainly. But it still has value.
I like what you said about how it can be a regrowth and 2 rampant growths, and it's 6 mana, so it is like you have all 3 of those 2 mana cards all in one. That's true, and if you have more stuff you want to get out of your graveyard, then you can just do that. Or if you have actual regrowth in your hand, you're like, okay, I'm just going to use my Verdant Confluence to get 3 lands on the battlefield.
Do you just have regrowth and commit Verdant Confluence your regrowth and regrowth your Verdant Confluence and cycle through that?
I mean, you could. It wouldn't do anything.
No, it would do anything, because off of every Verdant Confluence you can grab another permanent out of your graveyard.
Okay, I feel like it would do something.
That's super janky. It's cute. It's cute.
I guess,
Verdant Confluence your regrowth is what we're telling you to do.
Don't listen to Drew. It won't. That's not going to win you any games. Anyways, so Drew mentioned regrowth, which is just a 2-mana sorcery, 1 and a green for return target card from your graveyard to your hand. This can be Roalesk if he's in the yard. It can be anything else that you might want out of there. It's really efficient. It's a good card. And then it goes without mentioning, Eternal Witness does the same thing, but on a 2/1 body for 3 mana. And then there's also Green Warden of Miraza, which is a 6 mana 4/5 elemental, which also does the same thing. When it enters the battlefield, you get to return a card from your graveyard to your hand, and then when it dies, you can exile it and do the same effect, return a card from your graveyard to your hand. And what's really cool is that Green Warden of Miraza actually combos with a super cool card with Roalesk. And this card is also new out of War of the Spark. It's called Neoform. And Neoform is Simic, so it costs 1 green and 1 blue for a sorcery. It says an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature. In this case, you want to sacrifice Roalesk. And it says search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. Put that card on the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, and then shuffle your library. So here's what you do, Drew. You got Roalesk on the battlefield. You got some juicy targets for proliferation. You say, here comes Neoform. You put it on the stack. You sacrifice Roalesk. Roalesk goes to the bin. You do your proliferating. You go in your library. You get Green Ward of Marasa. When he enters the battlefield, you put Roalesk from your graveyard into your hand off of his trigger, and Green Ward of Marasa gets an extra +1/+1 counter.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
So, I think that's pretty neat.
I mean, it's not a combo, but it's cool. It's janky and it's nice.
It's a way to
sack. Quick way, yes.
To sack Roalesk when you want him, when you want to do the proliferating. This is a way to do it on demand and immediately get Roalesk back.
Yeah, no, yes, I do like that. And another quote-unquote combo that I see you have here is Eldritch Evolution and Avenger of Zendikar.
Yeah.
So, if you guys don't know who Avenger of Zendikar is, and if you don't, then you should become very familiar with him because he is incredible. He's a 7 mana, 5 generic, 2 green for a... I forget his creature types, but he's
an elemental.
He's an elemental, but he's a 5/5, and then when he enters a battlefield, you create 0/1 plants equal to the amount of lands you control. And every time a land enters the battlefield, it has landfall, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on each one of those plantitudes. So late game, he's a bomb, and he can certainly get you ahead, especially if you have a bunch of ways to ramp after that. He becomes very scary.
And did you read Eldritch Evolution?
I did not read Eldritch Evolution.
Okay, tell us what it does.
Huh?
Tell us what it does.
Oh, I had to look it up. Can you look it up faster? Oh no! Eldritch Evolution. I think I got it. Okay. Eldritch Evolution is a sorcery. It's 3 mana, 1 generic and 2 green, and it reads, as an additional cost to cast Eldritch Evolution, sacrifice a creature. And you can search your library for a creature card with a converted mana cost X or less, where X is 2 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. Put the card into the battlefield, then shuffle your library, exile Eldritch Evolution. So you're saying the Eldritch Evolution with a target of Roalesk and bringing in those dudes. Okay.
So you evolve your Roalesk into an Avenger of Zendikar, and you get those proliferation triggers.
You get it off. You still get them even when the things enter the battlefield.
What do you mean?
Like he doesn't die. They don't miss his death. Is what you're telling me? The planty tokens. Or you're just saying the juicy targets? No.
Yeah, no. It's just sweet to cheat out Avenger of Zendikar.
Okay. Yes, it is sweet to cheat out Avenger.
Yeah.
Right. I was confused for a second.
I know it would be awesome if you could get counters onto those plants and then proliferate them when Roalesk dies,
but
which you could in some situations, but not with this combo
with this.
in a sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
So these creature tutor cards are really cool. I think they're a really cool way to kind of on demand sacrifice Roalesk when you want to and get some really cool value out of it. But Neoform and Eldritch Evolution kind of have a criteria.
Yeah.
It has to be a certain converted mana cost. So you kind of have to build your deck to have some good targets. You could kind of make it toolboxy in that sense of I've got some good utility cards at 6 mana and 7 mana, so that I have a couple of different options to hit with, like Neoform and Eldritch Evolution. Another great card though is Natural Order, which is 4 mana, 2 green for sorcery. And it says, as an additional cost to cast Natural Order, sacrifice a green creature. And it says, search your library for a green creature card, put it on the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. So this one is going to do the same thing where you sacrifice Roalesk, you can get the proliferate triggers, but you can only hit green creatures.
Okay.
Which, I mean, green just has so many good creatures, so I don't think it's that much of a downside.
You hit the 9 mana elephant and you destroy
Terastodon.
Terastodon someone.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that's that big. You grab Craterhoof maybe?
Yeah, Craterhoof Behemoth.
Yeah, I don't feel like that's that big of a
I should
downside.
get this card for my Elves deck. Oh, that would be so good.
That would be disgusting. Let's not.
Yeah. Okay. Side note. Yeah.
And a side note, Will's gross. Another card that I see you have on the list is Perilous Forays. And so what that is this is an enchantment, and it's 5 mana. It reads, I'll tell you the card mana cost. It's 3 generic, 2 green, and it reads, pay 1 of any color, so generic. You can sacrifice a creature, and you search your library for a land card with a basic land type and put it into play tapped, then shuffle your library. So does that mean you can grab shocks with this? Okay.
Yep, so you can get shocks with it.
So you can grab islands, you can grab the tapped lands.
Get your original duels
if you're
rich, or a spike, or old. Those are your options.
Old, spike,
yeah.
Rich. Or yeah. Basically.
Okay, so here's why I like Perilous Forays. Is that it's a repeatable on-demand sack. And you still get some value out of it. It's going to ramp you, but something that's just going to sit on the board and say, we can just put, we can get rid of Rouse whenever we want. You can do the altars too, Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar if you want to. I just feel like that 1 mana isn't going to cost you that much, and you get like an additional mana for your next turn out of it. So that's cool.
I have do you have in your list not Fecundity. No, maybe Fecundity. The one whenever a creature dies, its controller can draw a card.
Oh yeah, Fecundity?
Yeah, that is Fecundity.
That would be good in this deck.
Yeah, because if you're continually attempting to sacrifice Roalesk, I think that getting some value off of sacrifice them, even besides just what you're doing already, just making it more valuable, that when you're sacrificing them, you're getting some good stuff.
Yeah. So Fecundity is a 3-mana enchantment that says whenever a creature dies, its controller can draw a card. Yeah. What I think is kind of cool about this deck is that I don't think that Roalesk is ever going to end up in the command zone.
Yeah, which is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're used to he costs 12 now, I'm not sure if I can cast, and he's either on the battlefield, in your graveyard, or in your hand. And
the only time I see him going to the command zone is if somebody Swords to Plowshares him and he gets exiled, you put him in the command zone, or if he's in your graveyard and somebody exiles your graveyard and he ends up in the command zone again. That's the only time I see him. Finally, for a sack outlet, we've got High Market. It's a land. It taps for a colorless mana, but you can tap it, sacrifice a creature, and gain a life.
Yep.
So this is just another on-demand way to, get Roalesk off the board and get those sweet proliferations. And this one is nice because it just takes up a land slot and it still taps for mana. So, it's basically like a free sack outlet.
All right, so I see you have some disgusting stuff here because you're a disgusting person.
So, okay, here's my theory here. Is that I think that there's a lot of really cool things that you could do with Roalesk when it comes to counters. I think you could do a +1/+1 counter deck. I think you could do a Super Friends deck and proliferate their loyalty, try and get some ultimates. I have heard quite a bit about people doing infect decks with him because you get one infect on somebody and you can just proliferate those counters. And then I think there's also just like some good stuff counter cards. So we're going to talk about some infect stuff. We're going to talk about some +1/+1 counter stuff. We're going to talk about some planeswalker stuff. Just kind of give y'all an idea of what might be cool to do with Roalesk. So our first, do you have the first one?
1 second. I think you wrote the wrong one because you put Blink Moth. It's Ink Moth Nexus. Yeah, it's 2 letters, but it makes a big difference.
All right, read it to us.
So Ink Moth Nexus is a land, and it taps to 1/1 colorless. But you can also pay 1, and Ink Moth Nexus becomes a 1/1 Blink Moth artifact creature with flying and infect until end of turn. It's still a land. Oh, so this is gross.
Like I just said about High Market, is basically a free creature.
Yeah.
You can use it really early in the game, and it has flying too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. So you can use it really early in the game just to get 1 infect on people, and then even if your deck isn't like a dedicated infect deck, you can threaten that for the rest of the game with your proliferate triggers. You can just keep on ticking that up, and people are like, "I got a clock."
Yeah,
you know. It can also be kind of a way to sneak out a win when people aren't expecting it. If you can like kind of combo off in a sense, sacrifice Roalesk a bunch of times, and get that, I think that could be cool.
I would just like a word of warning to anyone who's like, "Yeah, this is a good idea." People will there will be a target painted directly on you if you do play this.
There will be retribution.
If you play this, play this with the knowledge that this will happen. Also, I think it's important to know that it doesn't deal normal damage. In fact, it's completely different damage. So they don't lose life due to infect anymore. It deals damage at -1/-1 counters, which is also very interesting. If you can put -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures, you can proliferate those too. So that's not necessarily a bad thing to do. So just things you can do.
Yeah. All right. In the Planeswalker spectrum, I really like Kiora, the Crashing Wave. She is a 4-mana Planeswalker, 1 and a green and a blue. And, okay, so she only comes in at 2 loyalty, which kind of sucks. Yeah, but what's really nice is that her ultimate is at 5. So, you +1 her, and her +1 is, until your next turn, prevent all damage that would be dealt to and dealt by target permanent and opponent controls. So, if your opponents only have 1 flyer, or they only have 1 creature that might be able to sneak through and like trample over to kill Kiora, you just say, that thing, it can't deal damage, and it can't take damage until my next turn. And then, on like the end step before your turn, you sack Roalesk, proliferate her up to 5, because she'll go up to 3 off of the +1. And then on your turn, you can immediately -5 her, and her emblem is, at the beginning of your end step, put a 9/9 blue Kraken creature token on the battlefield. So every single one of your turns, you get a 9/9. I think that's awesome.
Awful.
Yeah, I think it's sweet.
Well, on the terms of sweet planeswalkers, we also have Tamiyo the Moonsage in here. And so let me just say that I have an affinity for Tamiyo. She is definitely my favorite. Her or Teferi are my favorite planeswalker. Teferi's more of my colors, but Tamiyo is like she's my first love.
Okay, we get it, Drew. You like control.
I like control. So Tamiyo, she's a 5-mana planeswalker. She's 3 generic and 2 blue. She starts with 4 loyalty. She has a +1, which reads tap target permanent. It is untapped during its controller's next untap step. Good. Tap someone's commander down. If they're playing Voltron or something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of screw them over.
Yeah.
-2. Draw a card for each tapped creature target player controls. So
I like that a lot.
Yeah, someone just swung out, you slam her down, -2 her, you draw a bunch of cards. Good. -8. And boy, is this -8 worth it. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. Okay. And whenever a card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you may return it to your hand.
You get milled, they go in your hand.
Roalesk dies,
he goes into your hand. Interesting.
It's
interesting.
So good.
Yeah, really cool value engine. Yeah. I like her. She's cool.
I love Tamio so
What's
much.
her starting loyalty?
4.
4? Yeah. So, you plus her a couple times, you sack her Roalesk emblem, here we come.
Yeah. No, she's cute.
Yeah.
She's good.
Yeah.
I like her
And she
a lot.
protects herself, too, by tapping stuff down. So, she's cool.
You could probably put the new Tamio into, honestly.
Yeah.
Probably not as good, though.
I guess she will get Roalesk back from the graveyard. With her -3.
Yeah, does she?
Yes. Okay, so the new Tamio costs 4 mana, and she has a -3. The one from War of the Spark. She has a -3 that is essentially a regrowth effect. So you could throw her in the deck too and get Roalesk back with her. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna move on to just kind of like some good stuff, some cool +1/+1 counter stuff, charge counter stuff. And our first one is Simic Manipulator, which is a 3 mana 0/1 mutant wizard. It costs 1 blue, and it has Evolve, so whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature has greater power or toughness than this creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, or when Roalesk enters the battlefield, you can just put 2 counters onto it from his trigger, which is pretty neat. And it has the ability of tap, remove 1 or more +1/+1 counters from Simic Manipulator, gain control of target creature with power less than or equal to the number of +1/+1 counters removed this way. So, you throw some counters on it, you proliferate them, and then you can take some off to gain control of a creature permanently.
I like that.
This is the rude kind of stuff that Drew likes to do.
I do like that.
Yeah.
Also, another card. No, I can't remember the name of the card. I was gonna suggest one. It basically what it does is it's a 3 mana creature, and you can pay 2 generic, and you remove a counter from a creature you control, and you draw a card.
Oh yeah. I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a Merfolk. It's
Sage of Fables.
Sage of Fables.
Yes.
That's also a good one if any of you are looking for card draw and ways to abuse the +1/+1 counters. Another super cool card that we have on the list is As Foretold. And As Foretold is 3 mana, 2 generic, 1 blue for an enchantment. And it reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, you put a time counter on As Foretold. And once each turn, not just your turn, each turn, so your opponent's 2, you may pay 0 rather than the mana cost for a spell you cast with converted mana cost X or less, where X is the number of time counters on As Foretold. So As Foretold usually isn't amazing in Commander, purely for the fact if you get a late game, it's just kind of sitting
really
there.
Slow.
But with Roalesk, if you're proliferating that, then you're killing it. Like that's gonna make life a lot easier and a lot better. It's gonna make things more fun than what they would be just by 1 time counter, 2 time counters. Now you're really up in the ante and really putting a bunch and really getting things going. So I like As Foretold in the stack.
Yeah. So our final card for today, our final kind of like good stuff card is Lux Cannon, and Lux Cannon is a 4 mana artifact, and it has tap, put a charge counter on Lux Cannon, and then also has tap, remove 3 charge counters from Lux Cannon, destroy target permanent. And that's really cool. It can blow up literally anything that you want. And this is kind of like a slow laser beam in a sense, because normally you would have to wait 3 turns between each activation.
Yeah.
But Roalesk can pop it up from 1 to 3 immediately. So if you're in a pinch and you just need a laser bolt right there to just destroy something,
So,
yeah, you sack them, you proliferate this bad boy up, and there you go.
cool.
Boom.
I like that.
And actually, I lied. I want to talk about one more pair of cards. Drew, let's talk about Pure and Toothy.
Purr and Toothy.
Yeah.
I love Purr and Toothy. So Purr and Toothy, they come from the Battle Bond set. And so what they are is they're partners, and so you could technically use them as your own commanders. But the great thing about them is when one of them enters the battlefield, You can search up the other, cause other with its ability that it has. So it says partner with Toothy Imaginary Friend, or Toothy says partner with Per Imaginative Rascal. And when they enter the battlefield, you search it from your library, put it into your hand. So Per reads, if one or more counters would be put on a permanent your team controls, so not just +1/+1 counters of any kind in team, because in Battlebond you would teammates.
Yeah.
A teammate. That many +1 of each of those kind of counters are put on that permanent instead. So Roalesk is proliferating twice, and he's putting 2 of whatever he's going on. So Tameo, you have Roalesk die, and you have Per out. So you're going up to 6 and to 8, and then you -8 Tameo, and you get your emblem. Per is disgusting.
Every time you activate anything that puts counters on the Planeswalker's Lux Cannon, he's just going to automatically put another one on there.
Yeah.
Which I think it's just so good. It's really good. And what's sick is that when he enters the battlefield, he's going to immediately go and find his friend Toothy out of your deck and put him into your hand. And Toothy is 4 mana for a 1/1 creature illusion, which has partner with Per. And then whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Toothy. And when Toothy leaves the battlefield, draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on it.
Yeah, so he becomes a threat, and when they remove the threat, because it leaves the battlefield, he doesn't have to die, he just has to leave the battlefield, and you get all the cards. So if someone bounces it, he's still leaving the battlefield, so you're going to draw those cards no matter what. And I think that makes Toothy, he's either a big threat, or he's a draw engine.
Yeah,
and
he's also cool with Neoform and Eldritch Revolution, because you can sack him to that, go tutor a creature, and draw a bunch of cards.
What I like is neoforming like something else to get Toothy and or to get Per, and then throw in that's a lot of
do value. Like a mana dork or something, get Per, and
you're grabbing Toothy along with that the next turn.
Agree, man.
I think that's cute.
Yeah. Well,
honestly, I did not think I would like that. Like kind of just like disgusting. I was like, oh, this like actually kind of
he's pretty cool.
Like, it seems
pretty
cool.
Like
a fun deck. No.
Like we said at the start, it's a little bit janky. You got some stuff that you have to really work around. But I think that there's definitely some cool potential for it. Definitely a lot of creative space for it.
Yeah, no, I think that's the cool thing about Commanders sometimes, is your ability to do something that's not completely normal in Commander. Because Commander, I think, can become very, not stagnant, but very similar. And like, oh, creature dies, command zone. But like, by just like not putting your commander to the command zone, gives your deck kind of a little bit of a flair and an unusual aspect to it, which I think I kind of like that.
Yeah.
So thanks for tuning in with us, guys. If you would like to follow us on social media platforms, you can find us on Curve EDH on Facebook or Twitter. We have now begun YouTube, so if you look up On Curve EDH on YouTube, you should be able to find one of our videos. I think the only video we have right now up is Tolsmir. Well, we should get more up there soon. If you guys have any questions or deck suggestions, or just want to talk, send us an email on oncurveedh at gmail.com. And we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks you guys for listening. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.